Well, it's just that someone had a brainwave recently of when she was sitting in a cafe herself, she realized that she'd like to talk to other people, and there are other people sitting by themselves, but there's no way that you can just approach a stranger and get into conversation with them just out of the blue like that. So she thought of this idea that why not set tables aside in a cafe where people can go and sit if they want to talk to somebody. So she approached various organizations, and one of them was Costa Coffee.
Yes.
And now they're going to introduce chatty cafes into their chain, that you sit at a table that's probably got a different color than the rest, and then anyone can join you who are in a similar position, just like to chat to somebody. So it's that's part of what I'm saying is a wider movement now. So we have a place of welcome where I live on a Tuesday morning, where people just go and sit down, have a cup of coffee, and just talk to anybody who's around them. And it's from such beginnings that you get people then just talking innocently to each other, find got things in common, and then can start enterprises or swap stuff that surplus to them. All sorts of transactions can take place.
Yeah.
Now the one,
amazing.
So what they do in Dudley and what they do in Barking is they also have people on hand to start enterprises in a proactive way. So they will sit down with people and say, is there something you would like to do, something you'd like to get off the ground? For instance, would you like to run cookery classes? And if someone has a skill, saying cooking, then they will set up meetings with people to come to that class, and then they will be instructed, and they'll create a cooking group. And it might be gardening, or it's some skill that people possess that they want to make more of. Because a lot of people who would like to create their own businesses, for instance, but they need that initial encouragement and support from people who know what they're doing. So that's another strand to this whole idea of creating a shop front where people can come and socialize.
Yeah, because it's, as you say, it's overcoming that obstacle of like not wanting to approach somebody and they just want to have a private space in a cafe.
That's right. Yes.
And that's a very kind of creative way of, like, you know, just different colored tables, or just an area which is reserved in the cafe for people who are basically, without verbalizing it, saying, you know, I'm interested in speaking.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there are lots of people like that around who maybe they're cooped up in their houses for a particular reason. Mother with young children, you know, who might not get opportunity to get out and interact with people. So there's 101 different reasons why people might want to just have an innocent chat with other people who might have things in common with them, but they don't know until they start speaking to other people.
Yeah, that's right. So it's just basically creating a space where those opportunities arise.
Yeah, it's all part of that creative interpersonal intelligence I was talking about, where just getting people together and bouncing ideas off each other can lead to something much bigger, the so-called wisdom of crowds, and crowdfunding, and people on the internet who just put a question out there into the ether and they get 101 replies back.
Yes. Yeah, it's as though with this technology, it's allowed us to facilitate communication in one sense, but it's undermined our ability to communicate in a different sense. So it's allowed us to be in touch with, as you say, crowds of people, but perhaps at a superficial level, rather than having a deeper conversation with a few people.
Well, that's right. And also any problem you have, the chances are that someone somewhere in the world has solved that problem, and you know, can give you some next steps in the chain to help you, you know, get out of your situation and do something creative that's been tried and tested somewhere else down the line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, the people seem to undervalue the power that you know, just ordinary conversations without an agenda, these random conversations can have in generating new creative innovative ideas.
Yeah, that's yes. So often enough, within a community, there's the power there. I mean, we can talk about the wider community of the internet, but just in a local community, there's often people there with the resources and the knowledge and the skills to solve lots of problems within that community. That people have the problem, they don't know where to go for the answer, and it's probably there next door to them, or somewhere else in the community, especially around health issues, for instance. There's a community. We have all this power, and it's just tapping into it and making it fertile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for yourself then, Chris, like, what is it that really inspires you? You know, like, I know that you have very creative ideas, but which of those creative ideas do you feel inspired to take action on?
Well, a lot of it is serendipity. You know, you accidentally stumble onto something, and then you start to formulate activities and projects that where things just come together. You know, the old thing that if we build, people will come, and that often happens. So it's happened with us in our community, in that we first of all started a gardening group, just really because it's one of those skills that people have and an enthusiasm that people have, and it's one that they can share. So we started the group, and there were lots of people interested in gardening. Then we found a piece of derelict land that we then started to clear and build plant beds on.
Mm-hmm.
And that brought a number of people together who had a social need more than anything else, rather than wanting to learn gardening skills.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were offered 3 greenhouses at the city hospital. Someone just wandered in there, and they were there, and they asked someone, they said, yeah. Mm-hmm. City hospital authority said, yeah, take it over, because nobody else is going to run it. So we moved in. And then we were also part of another scheme where someone had got funds from the National Lottery around bringing people in inner cities into open spaces, making use of open spaces. So we were part of that funding, and we bought 2 composters, just machines for composting waste food. Mm-hmm. And then we discovered that there is heat generated from composting waste food. Mm-hmm. So we used the heat to heat the greenhouses, and especially to set up a system where you heat water, run it under the soil, and it heats the soil. Mm-hmm. So we introduced some LCD lighting. It would have been better if we'd got solar panels, but we didn't have the technology. And that added an extra couple of hours of light to the heat. And so we were able to grow food all the year round. Mm. So you see it, and so just by little accidental decisions, then we met somebody who's resident in our community who's mad about worms. Mm-hmm. And he taught us that the worms create their own waste material, but this waste material is highly rich in all kinds of nutrients that we can add to the soil to enrich the soil. And so creating a wormery isn't all that difficult, and then draining off their waste product is not all that difficult. So there we are, we're just using nature organically, recycling the food, and we've got a circular economy without any costs, really.
Wow, that is amazing. So from that, initial idea, all these other things, they just happen through serendipity,
Yeah, that's right. And then the hospital came to us and said, well, I'm sorry, you can't continue here because we've got to build a new hospital and we've got to move from this site, the new hospital, and we're going to build houses here on this site. And you happen to be sitting on one of the best parts of the site overlooking the canal. And that would be a nice feature for our housing development. So we, through conversations, found out that on Edgbaston Reservoir, there's a large field that's owned by a Birmingham charity called Birmingham Settlement. And they invited us onto that land to transfer our project onto the field. And that suited their book because they wanted to use that field to create some kind of community enterprise. So we'd be the first one on the field. Then they'd look around for other environmental social enterprises that can occupy the rest of the field. And so from there, we then got partnered up with a well-established charity with its own employees and HR department and funding know-how. And also other people. There's a local housing association now wants to join in with us. We've also got social prescribing, local colleges. Everything is sort of coming together. So it's turning into a much more expansive enterprise than the one we started with, all from just little accidents and being able to put two and two together.
Yeah, and you mentioned a number of obstacles which for some people might have seemed insurmountable. For example, when the hospital said, we need this land back, some people might have given up. If they weren't resilient enough, they would have thought, well, we've had a good few years and now it's time the project has come to an end. It must have required people like yourself who were thinking about solutions rather than what the obstacles were.
Yes, and we did think at first that, we weren't sure where to turn to. There were other little smaller sites, but they couldn't have fitted everything on that we had. I mean, I'd known about that field for a long, long time, but I didn't realize that Birmingham Settlement were eager to do something with the field. And then it's just casual conversation from somebody from our organization just talking directly to their CEO. And then we all met up together and realized we were in business. And then there was another project going on attached to the new hospital, and they wanted to help us because they saw it as a way of providing a model for other social enterprises in the area, which could start to become self-sustaining and create jobs and be eco-friendly at the same time.
And what kind of structure do you have for your, for this organization that you've created? Is it a hierarchical structure or is it a network? Who's the boss basically?
Well, what we decided was that we'd form an alliance, which is one of the in terms now, where separate organizations who can't handle a project by themselves then join in with other organizations to do it collectively. It's something that's been trialed really in the health service, where you get often voluntary groups and statutory groups who want to have part of some big commissioned project, can't do it separately, so they join in an alliance, which is not the same as merging with somebody. It's just an agreement among yourselves that you will seek to run everything around this, in this case, our site. So we joined in with the Residents Association that back onto that field. We joined in with another neighbouring Residents Association. We joined in with an American evangelical group who want to create community called the Companions of Hope. We joined in with obviously the charity itself as part of the alliance. But then there was an arts group called Arts Scoop. They want to be part of it. And now West Mercia Housing, who run the housing associations in our area, and it's a massive organisation. They run 30,000 houses. They want to join in as well. So it's kind of expanding all the time. So but it's in the form of nobody at the moment is in charge. We all sit around and reach a consensus each time. So if, for instance, we're looking for funding, then someone will be assigned to do it, so it will be our organisation, the Residents Association, because we have a bank account and we have a treasurer and all the rest of it. So we can handle small amounts. But if it's something big, like building a new pavilion on the field, then it'd be the charity who will step forward and handle that. So it's, at the moment, it's a network, as you say, and
Right.
at the moment, the lines of communication are fairly short.
And it's a not-for-profit. It's basically a charity. It's not designed to make a profit, because sometimes it's when individuals want to earn a living, as it were, from these ideas. That's when it can become trickier, because then it's about ownership. It's about who's going to benefit financially from that endeavour, and then people might not be as willing to share their ideas and to contribute generously as your organisation is doing, because the motive there is not for personal financial gain.
Yeah, and so that's a decision further down the line as to what shape the organisation will take. So it'll be some form of social enterprise, because we want to make it self-sustaining. It will be not for profit, so people will be paid, but we won't have shareholders, any profit will go back into the business. But because at the moment we're not self-sustaining, and we do make a certain amount of money from selling plants, selling the compost we make, and I would think in time we will be taking waste food away from people and charging them for it. And there's a whole plethora of business ideas that we could use, but at the moment we're not making enough to pay somebody full time, or let alone several people full time, that we'll need to do if we're going to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing about the expansion of this initial idea is that it's been done through collaboration. The idea might not have been nurtured or been sustainable if there was only one organisation that was involved with it. As you mentioned, that there's several organisations who are already established, who are pooling their resources.
Yeah, and there's a lot of help at hand. People eager to help us be successful, and I think with an organisation that's got sort of ethical, social goals, there's also a lot of goodwill around it, and often a lot of backing from customers who want to feel ethically comfortable, and other organisations around who want to sort of demonstrate their social responsibility. So it's win-win all around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I suppose some of a lot of the resources come from people like yourself who are highly skilled, highly articulate, you've got a network already, whereas when people are struggling, you know, they don't seem to see the resources that someone who is more successful can see more readily, then that's another factor, isn't it? That it relies on people who are highly skilled, would you say?
Yeah, I think, yes, it's, I'm not so sure about being highly skilled. I think it's having tried things and failed and seen things that don't work and then stumbling on things that do work. That's the way forward, because it is a minefield, community participation and community endeavour, and it just doesn't, it does rely on just a few individuals normally, of people who do have, as you say, the resilience and the willpower to carry it through, and also have certain social confidence, know how to chair a meeting, know when to step away, and you know, if things aren't going to your liking but are going well, then not to try and impose your own ideas on it. Let other people take over if they have got the skills and the vision. So it's probably, it can be done with two people: one who's got all the strategic skills and the bigger picture, and the person who has the people skills, who can talk to others and persuade them and lead them. Mm-hmm. So it's a kind of dispersal of skills, which, that is, there's not one person who possesses all the skills to make it successful.
When you think about the main decision makers for this project and think about the age range, how many of them are under 25?
Probably not a lot. We have young people coming into the organisation. I wouldn't say under 25. I'd say in their 20s. Mm-hmm. So because there is a movement about in young people that they want to do something that's ecologically sound and is not part of the old social entrepreneur capitalist model of shareholder value and you know, people just sitting on shares that really not doing anything, and they're not doing anything for the organisation, but they just got these transactional shareholders, you know, who, which I'm one myself, and people are who have pensions and what have you. But it's kind of they want to rethink the corporation and the ways we make our living, so that we're not going to work every day wearing a mask and hating everything that's going on and having a life somewhere else. Mm.
And doing that for 40 years.
Yeah, and doing that for 40 years, that's right. For instance, the CEO of Birmingham Settlement, Martin Holcomb, he's very young at heart. I don't know how old he is. He's far younger than I am. And he's very nimble, very, very flexible, and makes decisions quickly, seizes the opportunity, which are kind of all the hallmarks of youth. Mm. Whereas the hallmarks of the older people is one of caution, being conservative, and if they've tried an idea in the past and it hasn't worked, don't really want to try it again. So we have a fair sprinkling of young minds and young people.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I suppose again that diversity in terms of motivation, in terms of intention for the project, creates creativity as well. You know, because there's fresh blood and there's experienced decision makers, and